Alex here with a legal nuts and bolts video on jury selection. Some time ago I did a video on trial format and I talked a little bit about this, and I also dedicated a video to jury trials, and again I talked a little bit about this. I knew that it was a thing. I didn't know exactly how it worked. And in my on my other channel, Our Nevada Judges, in fact it's not just a channel, it's a full-blown organization with the website. And anyway, I began to actually cover hearings and trials. I have finished covering my first trial on that channel, and part of that process was jury selection. And because of my coverage of the trial, the jury trial, I learned a whole lot about the format of a trial. So recently I did a video called Trial Format Revisited, and I elaborated a little bit on that. The main thing that I did with that video is direct people to Our Nevada Judges to watch a trial. Watch it from beginning to end, watch the flow, watch the phases, watch the way witnesses are questioned, the way evidence is submitted. And one of the things I mentioned is, unfortunately, the judge did not allow us to cover the jury selection process. And it had to do with the logistics. There is just a tremendous number of people in that tiny courtroom for that part of the process, and they're moving all around. And there's a rule in the Supreme Court rules that says you're not supposed to, cover the jury anyway. So it's not like you can point a camera at any of them. It would probably be a exercise in pointing the camera at everything but people the whole time. In fact, it might be more productive to just get audio. But anyway, having seen it and experienced it, I have some insight now. And again, this is not 100% down to the details because I wasn't in that room for the first part of this process. But my understanding is that the first thing they do is line up all the prospective jurors and pack them into the courtroom. And this is the portion that I wasn't in to actually witness with my eyes and ears. But my understanding is that what they went through at that point was the questionnaires that the jurors filled out, and it seemed to me that they specifically focused on excusing jurors that would not be able to participate because of some kind of extrinsic reason, like maybe they need like medical care too often, maybe they have to go to the bathroom too often, maybe they're injured in some way and they just can't sit down for too long. Maybe they can't focus because of some kind of medical issue. Maybe they're not competent to serve. Maybe there are issues as to their ability to understand what's going on. Maybe they have excuses like they have to go to a funeral next week or something like that. It seemed that that was the first portion of the process. There may have also been obvious disqualifying factors, like maybe one of the jurors knew the attorneys, maybe one of the jurors knew the party, or one of the parties, maybe one of the jurors knew the judge, maybe one of the jurors knew the witnesses. There was a whole lot of that during the first part of the process. So they packed the room full and they eliminated those jurors that just were not fit to serve for one of those various reasons. The second part we were allowed in, and apparently they have a name for this. They call it voir dire, and it's spelled Voirdire. 2 words. It's Latin. I'm not sure what it means. If you want to look it up on Google, you can. But it involved the attorneys asking specific jurors questions. It seemed to me that they took turns. So first the prosecution went, and then the defense went. And the prosecution went down the list and asked each juror questions. And I don't think it was necessarily formatted that way, at least not initially. The first thing that they seemed to do was ask questions to the jury generally. For example, has anyone sat on a jury before? Can we see a showing of hands? And then some jurors would raise their hands, and then the attorney would ask that juror some questions. And then they would ask other general questions like that about what they, general, what do you think about police officers? Does anyone have an opinion on police officers? Does anyone watch a lot of court TV? Does anyone have an opinion on this or that? And hands would go up and they would go down the list, and ask them questions. Later on, it seemed that the attorneys would pick out specific jurors who hadn't been talking much. And it also seemed to me that they had specific questions for specific jurors. And that might have been based off of questionnaires that they filled out. And they were trying to, at least it seems to me, they were trying to get to the bottom of whether or not a jury had, or a specific juror had specific prejudices or biases. And if they did, they would ask to disqualify that juror for cause. And I showed you the quote fingers for a reason, because there's apparently two different ways to disqualify a juror. One of them is for cause, and the other one is using a peremptory challenge. And apparently that happens to be a tool that just allows you to just get rid of a juror without any reason at all. There are a limited number of peremptory challenges given to each side, and let's say, I don't remember what the number was, but let's just say there were 3. And that would just allow an attorney to say, I want this juror gone. No reason has to be given. With a for cause disqualification, you have to actually give the court a reason. And it could be, well, I'm not going to actually go into the details. What I would rather do is have have my viewers actually look at some case law and look at how for cause disqualifications are, how they occur and how they are allowed. So you're going to have to do some research there. I don't want to just sort of give people some idea, because this is not something I've ever been through, and while I did observe it, there's no way I'm going to know every single manner in which you could disqualify a juror for cause. I've also seen some case law. Now, this didn't come up, at the actual jury selection that I went to, but I have seen that there is some case law that allows a attorney to block a peremptory challenge. And this appears to be very narrow, and one of the examples that jumped out at me was trying to racially load the jury. So for example, using peremptory challenges to eliminate all black jurors. There seemed to be some case law that allowed a judge to step in and say, no, hold on. I realize that you can use these to get rid of jurors for no reason whatsoever, but it does look to me like you're trying to get rid of all the black jurors and you only want a white jury. That's just a really obvious example. There's a lot of case law on that precise example. So just something there for the viewers to look into if they're actually going to represent themselves at a jury, and if they need to know more about jury selection. So the last thing I want to mention is an interesting concept, or an interesting point made by the judge. The judge told the attorneys, do not try and remove jurors while they are watching. And the reason why is, he said, if you do this, if you try to disqualify a juror, whether it's a peremptory challenge or whether it's a for cause disqualification, if you do this in front of them, some of them might think, oh, that's what I'm going to have to do to get off the jury, and they will copy that juror. So like if a particular juror said, I just can't be fair and unbiased when it comes to sexual assault because I was raped when I was 12. And then one of the lawyers goes, hey, I want to disqualify this juror for cause. The judge said, don't do that in front of them, because then other jurors will say, hey, you know what? I was raped as a child too, just to get off the jury. And when I was there observing, there was one obnoxious juror. So obnoxious. And they, the attorney asked, I can't remember which attorney, they asked him, do you think you can be, do you think you could give this, the defendant a fair shot? And they said, no. And they were like, why? And they just said, it's just not me. I think once you get to this point in the process, you're guilty. And it was like they just read off a list of Google. It was like so obvious that this juror just went to Google the day before, printed out the list, and it's just like one of the top few things says, hey, yeah, just tell them that if they've been charged, they must be guilty, because that's what... It was really obnoxious. It really reflected poorly on that person as a human being. But some people just don't care. They have no morals and they have no shame. They just don't care. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. And to see that, though, to actually see it in real life, it was appalling. But they excused the juror. The judge thanked the attorney for waiting until the jury was out of the courtroom to excuse that juror, because if they made a big scene of it, all of a sudden you're going to have other jurors who say the same exact thing because they just want to get off the jury. I don't believe there is anything else at this point that I want to mention. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post something down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.